probably the most texture to say. But so yeah, so Richard Garfield in '93, while a PhD student in mathematics and combinatorial mathematics, and his dissertation was, I can't even remember the title. It's pretty amazing. So after that, he worked in academia at Wheaton College, and then left academia in 1984 to work for Wizards of the Coast full-time, where he also created other games, Netrunner, Vampire's Eternal Struggle, and it's also important to note that Garfield definitely created a tournament system for Magic, which was another first in hobby gaming. And do you want to talk about tournaments a little bit now?
Yeah, actually, do you have anything about Peter?
I want to give a little bit of credit here to Peter Atkinson, the guy who ran Wizards of the Coast. Richard did not pitch Magic the Gathering to Wizards of the Coast. He pitched a little game about a walking robot, which turned out to be RoboRealm, which is a fine game. And Peter said, I'm a tiny little game company that makes role-playing accessories, and we can't make board games, they're really expensive. So how about you make me a game that I can play when I'm standing in line at a convention? And then Richard went away and said, yeah, something sort of maybe like that, I'll fix it up. And that turned into Magic. So it's easy to look at the creator sometimes, but he never would have happened had Peter not given him this bizarre game design requirement. And that's really where we get our best games, when someone tries to do something really different. And interestingly, you can't play Magic the Gathering.
I know, yeah.
You can't be done.
Yeah.
So,
Irony of that is funny.
Yeah. And should I talk about tournaments? I have more of a historical thing, and I promise towards the end I'll be quiet.
yeah, no, definitely. The Cyber Tournament system now, which was started in 1996 with the first Pro Tours. So yeah, again, that was another complete first in hobby gaming.
Yeah. Okay, so a little history, I'll be a bit more annoying history guy. Magic tournaments are not a creation of a company. They were created by the players on their own. This was gameplay, I forget the word I always use with my clients, it just happened. Like emergent gameplay. Put the cards in people's hands, stores ran these tournaments. The brilliance of Peter and Richard was to realize how valuable that was. So there were tournaments before Magic supported them at all. 8 players would show up at a store, they'd play a game. Very wisely, they listened to the players and said, you like this? Oh my gosh, we can make this what we do. And then they promoted the Pro Tour. And most people don't understand how much money they've given away. It's very different. If you watch pro esports now, and you see like the top guy get $1 million or $3 million, and the 5th guy is the last guy who gets paid. I bet there are people in this convention who've made, probably 100 people in this convention, who've cashed on a Magic Pro Tour. They pay really deep because they want to keep lots of players. They want everyone to know someone who's made money on the Pro Tour. There was a great time when Madden Football gave away $50,000 for a Madden Football tournament, and it got on CNN. And we were Wizards of the Coast, we're beating our heads on the table. We gave away $2.5 million that year. And we're like, we can't get any news coverage, because our game isn't based on football. But they really did want to make Magic a mind sport. They wanted it to be a truly competitive thing where you could become a hero and people would like you because you were or look up to you, not because of your athletic prowess, but because of your mental prowess in Magic.
And yeah, I think it's also, at this point, I think Wizards of the Coast has given away about close to $50 million. So it's to players, so that's definitely pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-numbing to me. Yeah. Especially when you consider, okay, if they gave away $50 million, how much did they make?
I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you that number.
You probably shouldn't.
No, I can tell you that, though, the surprise is that everyone thought that digital games would kill Magic, and that everyone playing computer, because computers are awesome and easy and wonderful. Hogwash. Magic's best year was last year, ever. So, 20 years on, is there any other game you can think of that's a hobby game that 20 years on is growing? Say Flux. Yes, go Flux.
Absolutely. We had our, it's been 19 years since I.
That's awesome.
And we just had our best year.
That is not a small thing. I mean, as people who make games, what you want is to have an impact on people and be around.
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I mean,
that's
the
awesome.
greatest feeling for me as a game inventor is the knowledge that people are having fun with my games, and it's bringing people together. And you know, when people come up and say, "Oh yeah, we met playing Flux and now we're married," or you know, my boyfriend and he proposed to me in a game of Flux. He made a card that was like, you know, a ring or whatever. It's just, I love stuff like that. And the best are when I hear about people who got into mental disabilities or something, and who our games allowed them to overcome those and socialize more. It's like, wow, that is just, you know, the best of all. And but we're supposed to be talking about Magic. But
Yeah, sorry.
but
Congratulations. That's
Matt, I want to give a little bit of props to Magic as far as what I do. Yesterday I gave a big talk about how I invented Flux, right in this very room. But I didn't really talk about Magic per se, because well, I had today, and I had plenty of other stuff to say. But as I think about it, you know, Magic did influence, you know, even us, even me. I mean, just when you sort of think about the basic structure of the game, Magic has cards that change the way the game is played. Each card has its own little rewrite of how things work, and it's all right there on the card. It's not unlike Flux in the way each card has its own set of instructions about how things work. And even the concept of these are the things I have, these are the things you have, and in the middle is stuff we're sharing. You know, I don't know.
It's affected a lot of game designers.
Yeah, well, but of course, Richard would say that one of his inspirations was the board game Cosmic Encounter,
Yeah.
in which each race had. Everybody play Cosmic Encounter? Woo! Okay, the rest of you have it. You should get out there and try it. That's a classic of the board game industry, and that influenced me too. I mean, it's because I was like, each character, each role got to have their own way of breaking the rules and doing their own things, changing the game. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also interesting with Richard Garfield how, has anyone ever tried to play his advanced version of Hearts or read about it?
I've read about it.
Basically, everything is the rules are like n times I, and everything is combinatorial mathematics. His complex rules are astounding.
I'm a big Hearts fan, but I looked at those long ago.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
He's already enjoyed that, Richard.
Not for me. I'm a bit of a purist. I don't know.
So yeah, in 1989, Garfield was inducted into the Adventure Game Hall of Fame, along with the game of Magic, and eventually he left Wizards of the Coast in, I think it was 2000, 2001, to become an independent game designer. But he's still contributing to the game.
I want to do one more Richard thing. Okay, so Richard's a unique person. Rarely wears socks that match. That's not the point of his comment. So I worked at Wizards with Richard. We worked on a game together for a little bit. And the most amazing thing about Richard to me is what motivates him, is what motivates, I think, you and I, which is to get people to play your games.
Yeah.
He, for lots of complicated reasons, could have taken any job at Wizards of the Coast he wanted. And they had a very robust R&D department, and he clearly could have led the R&D department. And instead of being the boss, he said, I don't want to be the boss.
Yeah, that kind of amazes me. He pulled old George Washington.
Yes, that's a good analogy. He just said, I want to be a game designer. Find me a boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do the same thing, actually. I'm constantly having to say, look, I don't want to help run the company. I just want to be in my own little cave making my games. And I have a joke. I invent the games, and Kristen runs the company, and they do everything else. And I have no aspirations higher than like creative director.
Yeah. And this is a role model for I think a lot of people, even outside of gaming, right? Find out what you love and don't let yourself be, teased into more money or more prestige or more whatever, just because if the opportunity's there. Like he just stopped.
But that really kind of amazes me. He takes such a hands off. I mean, it's just, and when you create something as big as Magic, it takes on a life of its own, and Flux is that way too. Not as much, obviously, but it does. But I'm like a control freak, or I like that quote from that ad with control enthusiast.
Control enthusiast.
Yeah, I'm a control enthusiast. So I don't like anyone else. I designed the Flux game. And yet he basically kind of walked away from it long ago and lets other people do all the work on creating all the new cards and just kind of has a hand in here and there, it seems like.
Yep, he's involved, and he researches better than anybody. He's probably the best ivory tower game designer we have, digital or analog. He thinks more about games, I think, at a level that I don't. I read his stuff, and it's amazing. Read his book, Characteristics of Games, if you want to be a game designer or game reviewer. It's a good one.
Yeah, and I think it's also, yeah, he definitely did the exact right thing with, you know, not becoming the head of Magic allowed him so much more control to an ability to listen to both the players and the people who were working at Wizards of the Coast, and then allowing him to kind of step away and let other people help design. So now Magic's legacy moved very, very far from the opening days, and has really taken on this where every plane and every story have become more intricate through the cards, and now, you know, the books that have come out and comics, and the flavor text on the cards. And then when Lorwyn came out and Planewalkers were first added, you know, it's interesting that now you're not the only Planeswalker. There's other beings who are there that have collected magic to summon monster spells, or, you know, things like randoming artifacts to fight for them.
How many of y'all care about the story of Magic? Okay. Just curious, because that was always a discussion at Wizards. One of the writers for Magic used to write for Roseanne, the TV show. And he always had this fight about how important the story was. And they're like, whatever, it's a 2 blue counter spell that draws a card. Yeah. It's interesting. We haven't seen a Magic movie yet, which is interesting.
It's been announced.
It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure has been. It's an odd world to make a movie.
D&D movies are an example. It will be terrible.
It's a whole other issue with the D&D movies. Yes. But yes, that is the indicator.
Yeah.
All signs point to
Yeah, but then again, you know, there's a clue. Fun movie made out of a board game. It could happen. But then there's every other movie made out of a board game.
Battleship.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I was
Clue
going
is
to
the
say,
only example I can think of a game, and it's terrible in its way, but it's also campy and fun.
how was everyone's favorite Forge pre-release? How was everyone's favorite Forge pre-release?
How many people went to the last pre-release? Just gotta throw out a question totally off scale. Are you guys happy with your hands up on the way that the culture of Magic is, the people you play with, you interact with? Okay, pretty good.
How many of you usually go to like a Friday night Magic event?
Not Friday night, but weekly, yeah.
There's a whole group of people here that don't even seem to play Magic anymore. That is fantastic.
I just play with my friends in my circle.
Exactly.
All right. Is there a reason? Is that all you have around you, or is you?
No,
you're
no.
trying to
I
play?
got other board games and video games and stuff, but it's just, you know, it's just another thing that we do. You know, it's just become so ingrained that it's like, you know, yeah, we could go out, but you know, we got all our stuff here.
Okay, I'm guessing that we have in the audience a kind of a mix of people who play Magic like religiously. Every new version comes out, they're in there buying it, they collect it, whatever. And then there's a bunch of other people, like they have a bunch of Magic cards and Magic decks, and just one of the other games they break out and play now and then. So I'm going to call those groups A and B. A is the hardcore, and B is the casual. So how many? Raise your hand if you're an A.
Hardcore.
Hardcore.
You know the cards that are good. You know what they
You
cost.
can't wait for that next expansion. All right, how many hands up for Cloud B? Okay, I'd say that the B's have it.
Yes. All right.
Whatever that's worth.
So I have a friend I work with. We make games now. We have one on Kickstarter right now. You should back it. It's called Epic PvP. Anyway, he used to work for Wizards of the Coast in R&D in the last 7 or 8 years, and he would be so happy to see that hand total. He worked very hard to get the alternate versions and ways to play Magic that are more casual friendly. If you would talk to Wizards of the Coast in 2000, there would be very few casual Magic players. It was very, very intense, competitive.
Right.
So that's actually very positive. Yes.
Question, I have a comment. I'm working the TCG hall upstairs, so I'm
Thank
one
you.
of the department heads. And we're playing Magic, and one of our concerns was Star City has a competitive event in DC this weekend.
Yeah.
Our attendance went up this weekend from last year, and we've taught people how to play Magic in draft.
Wow. So,
That we actually set a special draft aside for 7 people just to come out, and we sat down and taught them how to play, and they've been back. At least half of them been back all weekend.
the tabletop game industry, in the best numbers I can find, doubled in the last 18 months. That is an amazing number. So you're going to see new players of everything. The Green Bay Packers, I'm going to bring it up again. Like we've entered a different world of gaming now, I think.
I think one of the newest ones I saw was the new My Little Pony collectible card game now exists.
Oh, yeah, I don't.
Surprisingly good. It's way more advanced than the audience. It's made
That's
for...
what I don't get. I've studied that actually a little bit, professionally. And really, this game seems way more complicated than the subject matter.
It's for the bronies. It's for the adults.
Yeah,
That's fine. That's fine.
Clearly.
But it's not for my daughters.
The little girls who are fans of the show are
Yeah.
not going to be playing that game. They might play My Little Pony Flux, but they're not going to be playing My Little Pony.
And they should be. You should give them the
I haven't heard of that. They have said not yet. I know, because of the CCG!
Ah.
Anyway.
I know people can tell.
They have a draft. It has my prototype. Anyway, sorry to get back up non-magic subjects.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you were there at the beginning, and obviously in Magic development, for each new set, the designers and creators will undertake massive amounts of research. You know, for the Kamigawa set, you know, into Japanese. Lore was based around a lot of Celtic mythology and artistry as well, especially in the Theros blog. And I'm actually coming from a classical archaeology background. I did my undergrad in classical archaeology, so I've studied a lot of ancient Greece and excavated in Greece.
Wow.
And so, you know, and it's shocking how dead on they were at replicating things from Greek mythology, customs, texts from the false book they created, the Theoriad, is basically just their version of the Iliad. And yeah, the artists.
Well, they probably couldn't get the rights to the real Iliad.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Those licenses are really hard to get.
Paramount has to figure it out.
That-
All right, talk a little bit about the research. We want.
And it's interesting because for one example, the returned cards from the Theros block, they're all wearing the masks, and that's based entirely in archaeological history from early Greek sites where when people were buried, the kings down to the common people would always be buried between these gold to bronze funeral masks. So it's, yeah, the amount of work they've done is amazing.
So, I won't name the company, but there's an example of a product that created a category and then went away. Like D&D created role-playing pretty much. It's still here. Magic created collectible card games. It's still here. There are a few examples where a new category is created and then the product goes away and gets replaced by something else. If you look at those products, it's because the people who made them didn't invest enough into R&D. Wizards of the Coast R&D is as bloated as you can imagine, in the best way. I mean, they spend inordinate amounts of time. You can walk down the hallway of Magic R&D and you will see pictures on the wall for every color. Like, this is our representation of the white wall. Everything that makes us think of the color white in Magic. And there'll be pictures from fashion magazines, the Wall Street Journal, right? It's not just fantasy art. They truly defined their classes and their races and what things do at a level that I think in the hobby industry, only Games Workshop even comes close to. Games Workshop does very, very similar. They overspend on R&D. And that's why Magic can still be played competitively as well. Because on the design side, they make sure that it can be played competitively, and they do a pretty good job of reacting when it can't, I think. We all give them a little bit of leeway. We say, you know, that card got too powerful, so we banned it.
I'm still not sure about Deathray Shaman being banned though.
No single card talking. Set some rules.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
And for what's interesting about Khans of Tarkir is when Genghis Khan died, the
Genghis Khan died?
Not when I
No
played that game.
spoilers!
I knew he was old, but.
I'm sorry for the spoiler, you guys.
Spoiler. When I played that game, you did very well.
And what's interesting is the hordes or whatever divided into 4 different groups, and so they've been able to use material and archaeological evidence here as well. And most of it is from that time period. Some is from later Ottoman, but the only group that is not based in some sort of history is the Jeskai at this point from Khans of Tarkir. So it's fascinating. There's battle armor that looks so close to Abzan, it's unbelievable. And I think it was the Golden Horde that were farther over in China. I mean, and if you look at the artwork, they look like parts that are marked from the concept and Fate Reforged. So yeah, some of the classical Greek flavor in Thera. So it's fascinating. This is exactly what the temples look like, down to the fact that they got the roof correct, which were always covered in tiles. And there's also, these were painted, and there's evidence of paint there. And then, obviously, I mean, does anyone know who Nylia represents? Which goddess? Yeah. So the god of the hunt, or the goddess. So the Colossus of Akros, you know?
Colossus Road.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing about this card especially is that images of the Colossus of Rhodes that have survived look so close to that. It's pretty unbelievable. Has anyone ever heard of or seen any of the breaching hippocamps? Or any hippocamps in any art?
Sure.
So yeah, that had never existed as a horsefish had never existed before, and this was directly taken from iconography, and King Makar is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chain of the Rocks is interesting because it's the Prometheus, as his punishment for giving fire to man, was tied to the rocks and, well, chained to the rocks, and every day an eagle would come and peck out his liver, and every night it would regenerate. So, it's a little grisly, but yeah. So, if you want to talk about the tournaments.
Sure. So, I mentioned earlier sort of how tournaments started and how they've evolved. Started as competitive, low-key competitive, you and your friends. Got to be very, very high-key, very high stress, and it brought out some pretty negative player-to-player interactions, a lot of cheating scandals. It's interesting who was winning at certain phases in the Magic Pro Tour history. We had a magician as a world champion. That's not a good thing.
The amount of cheating that was happening in those days too, with people card sorting based on
Yeah.
there were differences in some of the bags.
Lots of ways to change. We also had some very good things happen. We had a couple of blackjack players win. Professional blackjack players who said, I can make way more money at Magic the Gathering. And they won by just being smart, right? So a guy won $250,000 one year playing Magic the Gathering. He's like, I make 120 playing blackjack before the casino take me out, and I can make way more at Magic. That became a problem though at some point. It started ruining this topic is about the culture around Magic and how it's changed, and it has, the player-to-player part of this culture has drastically changed. And you can just tell by how many of you said you're Group B, right? You're playing casually. There are now cards being created just for you. We used to have, they still use names for player types for Magic. They have the Timmy and the Spike, and there are these player categories. Yeah, they're like, and some they don't tell you they have. So the Timmy likes big numbers on cards that aren't actually very good, but they look good. And that was honestly a negative term. That was a term to say, well, this is the kid who's not smart enough to know this is a stupid card. And he shouldn't. He's just not very good. And now they look at the Timmies and they go, we gotta make cards for Timmy. We gotta make cards for Timmies that are good, that have big numbers, that people will like. And now some of the best cards in Magic are really high casting plus cards that do very well. So the tournament structure informed the culture, and then the company used the tournament structure to change the player-to-player interactions to be more permanent. They know people burn out of competitive play much faster than they burn out of social play.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how many games in comparison that I've played at home versus out, obviously. Yeah.
But wasn't the competitive structure of Magic specifically designed to get people more into Magic? The Pro Tour started pretty early, like 1996, like
Right.
30 years right after, and wasn't made for the express purpose of trying to make people consider Magic a competitive sport, none of the like of other intellectual sports?
Absolutely, yeah. The goal was to get people deep, because they knew once you figured out all the rules, you weren't going anywhere. Right? The barrier to entry for Magic is extremely high. You have to be really good and really desire to jump over that barrier to entry to become a customer. And the Pro Tour was a hook line over there going, come on, there's good reasons to come here. There's good reasons to come here. But then once it happened, they had to react to some negative responses. And they did see burnout. They saw a lot of like, hey, I'm really excited to go to my first Magic Pro Tour event. I'm a nice 11-year-old and I think this is a fun game. And this guy not only beats me, he beats me and tells me I should never be there. Or I'm a woman and I show up at a Magic the Gathering event and I'm told, I don't want to play you, you're a woman. You can't be good at this game. Right? So all of those things, they're like, this got too far. It's got to, and they still support Pro Tour and they design for the Pro Tour. First and primarily, they designed for the Pro Tour. But at least now they're considering the casual players. And there's more casual players here than not, so I think it's working for them. It's a balance I think they're trying to find.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions? Or do we have more?
I got into Magic back in the 90s, and one of the things I always wondered about from a lore perspective is what happened to Earth Planeswalker? Isn't that disappeared?
Do you know? I've got no idea.
No, I have no idea.
He kind of sacrificed himself to
That's a
create the
good
legacy weapon.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that question.
So
He suffered spontaneous massive existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Let me point you to Scaff Elias online.
Oh, Scaff, sure, yeah, he might know.
He will answer your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Skaff. He's a great guy, very, very smart. Yes?
So that actually brings up an interesting question. Earlier, you separated the crowd into hardcore players and more casual players. And also earlier, you sort of asked how many people cared about the background. I'm sort of curious, is it the casual players that care about the background, or is it the hardcore players that care about the background?
I am curious as well. Hardcore
Yeah.
players, hands up again. Are you care about the background? Keep them up. Oh, okay. So there must, I should say all of them do.
So the casual players,
Yeah,
Yes,
casual
yeah.
players, hands up. How many of you care about the story? Keep your hand up.
Much less.
Kind
I
of,
like the
yeah.
mechanics.
actually,
That's really what it is.
It seemed like it was kind of half and half in each group.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was actually much more surprised that the casual players actually care at all, because most of them don't buy enough cards to get all of the flavor text to understand what's going on in the game.
Yeah, and they don't have as many like easy to grok characters, or at least the cards I've seen. Like the old days of Squib, the goblin or whatever, Squib, whatever the guy's name was. He was infinitely likable. He's like a funny little goblin. He shows up on 10 cards. I can pick up any of his cards. Go, oh, that's a cute little goblin. That's funny.
Well, one thing I could kind of comment on him about why I guess Magic's so great and what he just said was wrong is
No, he didn't say Max was great. He said he didn't care about the story.
they try to design a set so whatever the set is about, you'll maybe get open 3 packs and you get it, or even a pack,
Yeah,
and you get what the story is about.
yeah, they deliver the story, but try to tell the Magic the Gathering story. Those of you who love stories, try to summarize it for a 10-year-old. I can summarize almost any movie ever made for a 10-year-old. I can't summarize the Magic the Gathering.
It's hard to summarize 20 years of cards.
Even the short stories are hard to start.
Yeah.
So what's a planeswalker? Okay, hold on. Planeswalker. Which is not, it's not something they're familiar with. Yeah.
So this is less of a question, more just a PSA. But for years, you had to buy books to get the story for Magic, and they've slowly gone away from that. Last year, they had an ebook for Theros Block, but Khazad Tarkir, the story is entirely online. So if you really want to know the story and you don't, They put out 5 articles that are pretty much they tie one right into the other about Sarkin's journey on Tarkir and the whole time travel aspect. And you can find those at dailymtg.com.
Right.
Are they free or you just?
Totally
They're
free.
free, yeah.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like they want people into this.
Yes.
Very much they want you to care about the story. Because characters matter to people.
So the question is it only available online or is it also in the media? Because I don't remember seeing that many, there was this huge spurge of Magic multimedia stuff like the books and the comics around the late 90s, early aughts, but that sort of stuff all sort of trailed off.
Yeah.
So
Well,
other than
actually-
looking on the fan sites and looking on the cards, where else do you find the story?
Actually, the comics haven't dwindled out necessarily. I mean, there was just a series there was just a comic series for Theros that came out, and before that, they were trying to explain the story of this planeswalker, Dak Faden, from who was really. They were trying to explain the story character of this Dak Faden.
Who puts out the
IDG?
Yeah, IDW. with
IDW.
comics. Yeah. So yeah, they are definitely, they're still coming out, and but yeah, I mean, it's true that sometimes you don't necessarily want to buy the Theros book online or jump in and know. Yeah, and it's true that it's so hard to understand the beginning of Magic and even the Urza story if you haven't read the books or if you don't have any card.
There's a little interesting history there. When Wizards of the Coast bought Dungeons and Dragons, they bought a publishing sort of wing because D&D made books. So they had a person in charge of publishing. And syncing up the timing of the books with the card releases was very hard because if it ever came down to it, R&D won every fight. And that's a good thing. That's what you would want to do as a leader of that company. So you could have a card in the set of an important character, and at the very last minute, R&D says, yeah, no, too powerful, we're pulling that card. And then the novel guys go, we just wrote 3 books about that character. So it became sort of a following thing. It was never really easy to do it all at the same time. But for a while, they had those combo packs, where it was like, you could buy the novel and the stuff, but the novels were still thin because they had to leave so many facts out. Very challenging. And then they don't have their publishing division anymore. They ejected that, I think, at some point. Or at least
Well, I think part of it is because novels because of distribution channel, you need like 12 to 18 months at the time for our novels to get into a bookstore, which is a pain in the ass, I guess.
what's a bookstore?
Sorry, one.
Sorry, we had another
It's kind
question
of like
over
a
there.
library, but you can buy them.
Okay, we have another question about yes, Mr. Striker.
So my question is sort of get your opinion. Talking about design earlier, in my opinion, Magic the Gathering is very, very transparent about their design. Headlined by Mark Rosewater, who does all of his design columns. You talk about open designers, he has a podcast. There are reams upon reams of information readily available. They advertise. Go to magic.com and read about how we make our game. Number one, how do game designers feel about this incredible thing? Do you think it helps satisfy the fans of the game? And should more people be doing it? That's my 3 questions.
So that R&D team, like I said, is bloated, and in a good way, I mean, in a bad way, which means they have time to do that. And they study, like I said, game design more than most people do. So they actually have really interesting things to say. Most working game designers have time to work and not time to post. And all of that makes them look like experts, which makes you trust them. And so it's all a very good cycle of them being open and you trusting them for their openness. And hopefully they're open when they mess up. And I think Mark has been open when he messed up. Mark was the guy that used to write for the Roseanne Show, by the way. And now he's the head of Magic. So story is very important to him, for those who care. So you share your design thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I think it's very good to be open. I try to be very open about my system, and I let people play test games, and I solicit input. It's as a designer, you have to be the final, the buck stops here. The design, like you said, about if that card's too powerful, it's
Gone.
just got to go. So there are plenty of times people say, "Oh, you could do this," and I'm like, "Yeah, that wouldn't work." But I believe the community is one of the best resources a game designer has for tuning their work, and they'd be a fool not to listen to that input.
Yeah, I will say that Magic did change the game designer community quite a bit. I would say before '93, if you asked someone, what do you want to do when you graduate college, and they said, I want to go work in the gaming industry, people would have laughed at it and said, oh, well, prepare to live in a van and sell everything you own, or just burn it now, because you're not going to have to sell it for the product you're going to keep in your backyard that you'll never sell. And then Magic happened, and it became a reasonable goal to work in the tabletop gaming industry. And that might sound obvious now because tabletop gaming is so big, but it wasn't back then. And so in '94, '95, a huge number of people came in to work in the gaming industry. I was one of them, working on a collectible card game, one of the 1,000 collectible card games.
Well, yeah, between '93 and '96 or so, no game got published at all that was not a CCG, because it was like, everything has to be the CCG now, and all kinds of otherwise good games were sort of shoehorned and changed into the CCG format to their detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're probably thinking of the same game.
Oh, there's probably more than one example.
Oh, say what it is, now you gotta tell me.
The Illuminati, I'll just say it.
Perfect example.
Yeah, the game Illuminati is one of my favorite games as a kid, and then when it became a collectible card game, I just stared at it and went, what happened?
Yeah.
They have a rule, can't win on the first turn, because they couldn't figure out how to make a game where you couldn't win on the first turn.
You just can't. It's
Yeah,
a rule.
and-
Oh, that's the worst. If a game designer just has to say, there's a rule that says this can't happen, just because they couldn't design the rest of it. So
Cleverly, yeah.
Yeah.
But of the thousands of people that came in, it created a whole generation of brain power and new ideas and new thoughts, and maybe only 10% of us are left. But I would like to think it's the best 10% that haven't already jumped over to computer games. And we are thoughtful about our game designs, and we all came in having to do everything. Like, I designed a game, and I sat on Photoshop when someone taught me how to cut piece of art out of, I don't know any of that stuff. I had to learn marketing, I had to learn shipping, I had to learn everything. So now when I work with companies that I work with, I can talk intelligently about every phase of that job. And so can Mark. Mark's a very, very smart man. A lot of respect. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there, but it did change the game design industry, I think.
it changed so many industries. I mean, the CCG revolution of the early '90s, Magic started, was epic. I mean, it reshaped the whole industry in ways that we're still continuing to feel the effects of.
Yeah, we haven't had a really kind of boom like that in a while, where a whole new generation of designers have said, now I can come in. We're seeing it in video games.
Yeah,
right now.
video games is where it's changing so quickly now.
Yeah.
But, it's real heavy-duty game changers like that only come along every decade or two.
Yep, I agree. 100%.
So yeah, I mean, other than playing at home, it is interesting how Friday Night Magic has grown so much. I mean, at this point, you're hard pressed to find a comics or game store that is not running a weekly event, at least one, and usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting how unique this is in gaming, because in computer and console gaming, you said you play by yourself unless you're in a LAN party. But this really requires you to be either social with friends or social out with playing a game with strangers. So it's interesting to me how well Wizards of the Coast has done at promoting this and making it so that it works out for all these comic stores. I guess they must, game stores, because they're making money. And so it's that's with a lot of games, it's hard to it's definitely hard to find an audience in a large scale.
Number one reason people leave Magic or any collectible game is I can't find someone to play against.
Well, that's broader than just Magic.
Yeah, but that's all the days.
I hear that in our industry. I love the games, but I can't find anyone to play with me.
Yep.
And sometimes I have to think, there's, poor sportsmanship or that kind of issue sometimes come into play. Well, maybe nobody wants to play with you because you're no fun to play with.
And when Magic was
but sometimes you're living in a place where it's hard to find other people who are like-minded. You're in a remote community or wherever, and it's the problem of all of our kind of tabletop industry things is finding time in a world with so many other distractions that you can get people to stop and play a game like that. And
This is another reason for the push to social gaming for Magic. When Magic was tournament, we knew how big that group was before they would stop playing. If you can't put together at least a 4-person fake tournament, you're done. And generally it was 8. 7 with the bye, 6 with the bye was okay. But if you jump under 8 in your local community, you leave. Social gaming doesn't have that problem. So it let people stay playing the game much, much longer. Any bridge players here? Play bridge? Okay, so the model of Friday Night Magic is bridge. Bridge clubs always meet on Tuesday, everywhere in the world. So if you're a bridge player...
Yeah, that's true.
What?
Yeah, bridge night. Tuesday,
Yeah, it's Tuesday. You can find a bridge game anywhere in the world on Tuesday. And so they're like, well, Bridge owns Tuesday, and our people generally don't work on Saturdays, let's make it Friday. And they worked that really, really hard. They did a great job. A bunch of other companies like, well, if it's Friday Magic, it's Saturday my day. And that's just, that's not part of the deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Magic is such a force that everybody else has to kind of work around it. Like, yeah, Friday night, forget it, it's Magic.
Yep.
Another thing that we have to do is, like, we're looking at, okay, when's our next product come out? We got 3 big products coming out this year, and we want to make sure that we're not going to release a product on the same weekend as there is a Magic release, or even close. I mean, we want to be off by a month or two, because when those Magic releases come out, it sucks up all the other resources, and anything else is ignored and overlooked.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Magic affects every other game.
It does.
We have to dodge them. They're like the Matrix, where like the bullets coming of Magic.
Yeah.
We're like, no!
Oh my God, it's Magic! Watch out!
Yeah, get out. Because retail stores can only afford to buy so much inventory.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've literally had situations where a store has said, "Well, all of our money is currently tied up in Magic product right now, but we're going to order your thing next month."
Next month, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's,
I'm waiting for the first Magic Kickstarter.
Yeah. Why would they need that? I mean,
I
they
would
were
just
just being kickstarted.
It would just be fun.
Yeah, I don't
They
know.
would clean up all the money in Kickstarter.
Yeah,
No other Kickstarter would succeed.
Oh my God! But that oatmeal thing, you seen that oatmeal?
I was working on, yeah, that's good. I was working on a product called Legend of 5 Rings. I was brand managing Wizards of the Coast. And I was in a big meeting, and Magic had just sold like 1 million copies of his 2-player set because they put a really powerful card in one of the decks. And the CEO got all, I think it was called, I don't remember what the card was called. Oh, it's called Oblivion, whatever the card was. And the CEO looks at me after I did my presentation. He's like, hey, why aren't you going to sell 1 million copies of your 2-player set? And I said, I will, just let me put an Oblivion card in my deck.
Right.
It was a totally different game.
Right.
Yeah, Magic soaks up all the air in the room, and you just got to go, it's yours. Which is nice, actually. It at least it provides those retail stores with consistent sales, so it keeps them around.
Yep. Yep.
So here's a store I've seen. And so, and this is what they've done in Friday Night Magic. Just cleared everything out for a sizable amount of players.
People still use the Crown Royal bag. Look at that.
Yeah. That's
You
interesting.
can't beat a Crown Royal bag.
That was like a 7. All right, here we go.
I just have to say, look, I'm using one right now.
There you go. There you go. It's the whiskey and gamer. I sense opportunity here.
It's the unofficial gamer bag of, unofficial dice bag of gamers everywhere. Crown Royal.
I'm gonna make a Crown Royal dice set.
Yeah, Crown Royal ought to be somehow
Yep.
in on that.
So I just want to kind of open this up to the audience at this point. So, what draws you to play Magic socially?
I'll just tell how I got back into it, which was just going to college. And in between classes, just going to one, like the casual where everyone eats and stuff, it's right outside the cafeteria, people playing Magic. It's like, I remember this little playing as a kid, and I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Went back into it, and into it I got.
How many of y'all played the Pokemon trading card game? Did you play that and then get into Magic later?
Magic was first. I got both at the same time.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Wizards of the Coast, we had something called the Scaff effect, named after Scaff Elias. We had 2 of them. One was every Pokemon player is a potential Magic player. So whenever someone said, don't give resources to Pokemon, we're like, shut up. Every Pokemon player we get is a potential Magic player later. It's not about competition, it's
Find
about
a way
duration.
to it. Yep.
It's about duration.
Yep.
Yep.
Long view.
Yep.
I did tournaments for both of them when they were going on. It was like one day after another.
Big fan of the yellow rat. Big fan. Taught a lot of kids to read.
More of a social aspect is the people. I'm a software engineer in the day, so I don't want to be in front of a computer. I want to see people. I judge, so I've been judging like 13 years, so I go to a lot of events and interact with the people from a judge level and from players. I'm very interested in seeing where are people coming from, why did they come here, and what's making them excited. So what can we do as staff to do stuff for the team to have them come out and play some more. But it really comes down to the people. The people's what make the game. It's
Absolutely.
a social aspect.
We didn't talk much about judges. That's a very interesting subculture of a subculture. People who are willing to spend their time settling other people's fights.
Yeah.
My designer friend Ryan Miller got a job. He worked at the Wizard of the Coast Center when they had one, and he was a judge, magic judge. And when he got an interview, he said, "Well, why should we give you the job?" And he said, "I used to be in the Army, and I was a prison guard at Leavenworth." He says, "Well, then you can probably handle the magic things." And this guy's like 6'6", like he's a monster of a guy. Funny as well.
There's challenges.
It's an interesting, that'd be an interesting whole panel on judging.
So, I played D&D in the day. My buddy was a dungeon master, and then I guess, I don't remember how I discovered magic, but he became a magic judge, and that was probably how that happened.
Right.
And then I went into hibernation for the last 15 or 20 years, and now I'm interested again. So how would I get started? What has changed?
Oh.
Now, I missed the first half of your talk, so I apologize for that.
Well, let's see. What has changed?
From Magic?
Since from what year?
Yeah, how far back do you go?
Well, I mean, you're on a new cycle of all new rules, all the new subtext rules.
Right.
I remember playing in 95-ish.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
I had a bunch of cards.
everything looks a little more densely packed with words, a little more complicated. The cards, it's the same basic game, but there's some weird, like, I don't know what that does.
And I think that's one thing. I mean, the art has just gotten
Way better.
amazing.
Yeah. It was always good, though.
It was always
the original.
You said you had
Oh, yeah.
cards from that
Pretty
era.
amazing.
Yeah, so if I want to
Get somebody trust to appraise them.
If you want to go upstairs.
I'm curious. I want to know something about Magic is a collectible card game. So, how many of you actually collect, like, try to collect a whole set of various sets? Hardly anyone. Just one or two. Yeah.
You collect to play. You collect for cards.
Or like all the rares or sometimes the sets, but not like the whole set.
So just a quick random aside. Has anyone ever used Puka Trade or heard of it?
Heard of it.
So if you just sign up for Puka Trade, they give you $5 in points basically, and it allows you to you mail a Magic card and get points for cards you don't have, and vice versa. So you can, if they're cards you don't have, it's fairly easy to get cards through there. I mean, I was able to get maybe 3 Mythic cards just for signing up. It's pretty great.
I would say what's changed, and the best way to get back in is there's probably theme decks. Start there. Right?
Yeah.
No advantage, very well play tested. They'll teach you the new game mechanics that are out. Go to Friday Night Magic and talk to a nice, friendly judge to match you up with someone who's very patient.
Yep.
But it's the same, like I said, it's structurally the same game.
Yeah.
Man, the creature.
I just played it again with him for the first time in years, and it's like, okay, it looks a little different, but it's still basically the same game. I got my guys, I'm tapping my things, I'm attacking you, you're blocking.
What's different is tapping is no longer protected by a pact because 20 years are up.
Right.
Sorry, that's only exciting to me.
No, I share your
Yeah, that's a very good
for intricacies of intellectual patent law.
Yes.
In the back, and then. Oh no,
I
yeah.
wanted to answer that original question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to play in the 90s and like all through high school, and then I went to college and stopped. And then I got a job for college. I moved to a new city, and I was like, I want to make friends and like I'm kind of introverted, so I don't always want to have to just be having conversations with people. Like I'm like to debate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the power structure and like the ratings and everything, and like even like like I wanted to be a judge at one point. I thought it'd be cool to have people know that I do stuff. So there's things like that that are really nice. It's like you can kind of just walk in and feel like friends without really having to try to make it hard.
Right. I know I've done the exact same thing when I moved. And, you know, I did move. Has anyone, that's a question, has anyone ever moved what game store they go to for F&M? Yeah, I know that I have a couple times, but I mean, it definitely when you find the right group, it's pretty great. I've made a lot of friends, yeah.
I want to say thanks for that incredibly honest answer. You just made a bunch of game designers really happy. That is all we want to hear. I wanted to have a hobby I could share with people that would be about this hobby, but would be next to each other. That's just, say that about my game someday so I can be happy, because that is just that is what we want to have.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a couple of final things. So you've already shared what you feel you get out of the experience. Does anyone else? Yeah. Okay.
Kind of helps you analyze real-life situations. You think about what cards you have, and you have to consider variance of the cards you draw. And I think it's just good. You give you a sense of statistics and how things apply to real-life situations.
Right.
Yeah. Puzzle solving is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
After playing Magic, I've actually like learned to be more patient just with people and and I feel like that I've been able to like work out anger issues through that.
Right.
Well, I should probably play some more Magic.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It's able to like calm me down, and like after doing it, I'm being able to be calm for other situations through that.
Right.
Just through, I don't know.
I mean, I think there's something about, you know,
That's
win or lose. Like if you can be, you know, gracious about that, like that's definitely something, you know, and just shake hands with the person.
Well, that's like I said about sportsmanship. If you want to
Right.
play games with people and continue playing games,
Yeah, I
with
feel
people,
like
you got to
that
be
taught me
a fun person to
sportsmanship,
play
too.
games with. Whether
I
you're
feel like that helped me like get the sportsmanship mindset and
yeah, yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, in basketball, they invented this term, you got to respect the game. that term was invented on purpose for basketball so there'd be less trash talking. Not in the pros, but in the street ball that people were playing on their own. Magic's worked very hard to tell people to respect the game. If you're going to play a lot of Magic, I don't care how good you are, you're going to lose a bunch.
Yep.
You better learn to do it well. You better, or you're no one's going.
You have to learn how to lose, yeah.
Yeah, you have to learn to lose.
Exactly.
Hey, winning is easy. Like winning's awesome, but losing and
Yeah.
knowing you can still have fun.
No, but
losing.
winning is not easy.
No, you're right. You're right.
The hardest part sometimes is to win without being a jerk about it.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a good game of thinking. Stuff in your face.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
I guess the aspect I like the most is deck building. So that's even, not actually playing the game.
Deck building launched a lot of game designers. That's like what I was saying. I think that some of the way you get started on game designing is there's a game design challenge of just saying there's all these Magic cards, which one am I going to put in my deck?
Yeah.
That teaches you a lot about constructing game playable thingies.
Yep. Every game designer is every one of you is a game designer when you build a Magic deck.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree too. I love the deck building, but I feel like I interrupted you.
I will also say that a hobby game, the way I define it, is the thing that a hobby is what you spend your money and your time on. Magic is great because when you're not playing, you're still interacting with the Magic hobby, right? You're still building your deck, even though there's no one around. You're buying, you're collecting, you're talking, you're online. Yeah, you're organizing your cards. It is that whole metagame, where the original term that Richard likes to use for metagame is all the stuff that surrounds the actual playing of the game.
Right.
And Magic is rich. So is, painting miniatures, the Games Workshop stuff, lots of time painting miniatures and talking about things. The games that I think I tend to be making now don't have very much of that at all, because I don't believe we have that much time, and if you really like that, you play Magic.
Well, we're practically out of time.
Yeah, let's see. I think we have time for.
Let's see.
Yeah, one more.
back.
Yeah, I was going to talk about deck building too. Something that I get out of it is the urge to fight the first reactionary response. Like when you play something and you get shut down by this one thing, like, oh, my deck's not horrible, this thing that I added sucks, my whole archetype is stupid. And then you play for 2 more, and you're like, oh wait, I just drew really bad. And
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, or it's stupid, and you get more of those, and then
Absolutely.
Right. And learning when that's changes instead of big changes, and understanding that adaptable and getting data is really valuable instead of jumping to a conclusion.
It's a craft. Like,
Yeah.
not so much an art, it's a craft.
But you can learn a lot about game design by deck building Magic cards. What?
I'll shut up.
Okay, and does anyone have any last comments? I guess we're just about out of time.
I would have one last comment. That in another panel we talked about games that are going to last for a very long time. Now it's very hard to make a game now that will last for a long time. It was mostly a digital panel. I do believe Magic is something that you'll be playing in 20 years. It's unusual because it's impossible to clone and be meaningful because the network of players is so strong. I do believe it's playing Flex in 20 years, by the way.
I was going to say, yeah, like, I have a friend whose father actually, for all three of his kids, he basically got them started on Magic early and was pretty much hoping that one of them would be able to go pro.
It's like Tiger Woods' parents.
Yeah, exactly.
None of them have.
If only my kid will be on the football team or maybe the Magic Pro League.
I always think that's funny. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for
All right, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all.